Welcome to another Maine SBDC webinar. My name is Kelsey Reardon, and I'm with the USM state team, and we are joined by two more business advisors from the state team. We have Chris Cole and Susan Desgrosseilliers, even though I feel like I've messed up that name. I realized I had never said it out loud, and I was going to need to practice today. But today we're going over real estate investments and whether or not rental properties are a good move for you and your business. We will be utilizing the chat for any questions you have along the way. Also, feel free to introduce yourself, maybe let us know what part of the state you're in, what kind of a real estate situation you're looking at these days. Additionally, you will receive a follow-up email from me afterwards with a link to the slides and a link to the recording. So if you have any, you need to pause or rewind or check in, you can always rewatch that. Additionally, all of our contact information. So if you are not familiar with the Maine SBDC, we are the Small Business Development Centers, and we're here to help with any business needs you may need or have. And so our business advisors are available for free confidential business advising, and Chris and Susan's contact information will be in those follow-up emails as well. So like I said, feel free to use that chat. Looks like we've got a bunch of people here today. So if we have time at the end for questions and answers, maybe we can unmute each other or, unmute and answer some more questions that way. Otherwise, plug them in along the way, and I will pass it over to Chris.
Thanks, Kelsey. Kelsey said I'm an advisor with the SBDC. I've been with the SBDC for just over a year now, but prior to coming here, I owned and operated restaurants and other food businesses. I also worked in the trade show industry doing sales and marketing, and I've done real estate management. And on the side of all of those things, I have purchased apartment buildings, single family homes, and other commercial properties, renovated and sold them. So that's a little bit about my background. And now over to my co-host, Susan. She can tell you about herself.
Great. Thanks, Chris. So yes, I'm Susan Desgrosseilliers. So that was really close. Kelsey, good job, good job. So I have been a business advisor with the Maine Small Business Development Center for, I don't know, like maybe almost 3 years now, I guess. Was a business owner for about 30 years. And during that time, my former husband and I also had another business, and we would buy old properties, renovate them, residential, commercial, similar to what Chris is talking about. In Maine and in Florida. Combined, Chris and I we figured out over 40 years of experience in this business. And I'm also a licensed Maine real estate broker and have been for 33 years, I think it is now. And as a side note, Chris's brother is also a broker and was just selected as the top realtor for the state of Maine. So kudos there.
Thanks,
yeah. Okay. So let's get going with this. So first thing, I just want to tell you a little bit about what we do. You can just keep clicking and they should come up. Yeah. So as Kelsey mentioned, we provide complimentary confidential business advising to anybody that's looking to start a business or is already in business in the state of Maine. This is one-on-one advising. And again, as I mentioned, for business startup, we work with business planning. We work to help our clients with financing if you're looking to obtain loans. We help you with your financial analysis, projected income statements, that kind of things, marketing and sales, management and employees. So we basically cover a full scope of what your concerns or issues might be when running your own small business. We like to say that there's an advisor near you. There are now 13, I think, professional business advisors. We're located throughout the state of Maine. So no matter where you are, we have someone that can be of access to you. And you can make an appointment by visiting our website, logging in or registering for a request for an advising, and you'll be matched with an advisor that is in your local area. Okay, so we're going to go through these 9 items here in preparation, purchasing. I'm not going to actually read through those, but these are the things that we're going to work on and discuss in our webinar today. So let's start with purchasing, cash, and borrowing. And one thing I wanted to note is that the title of this seminar or webinar is Real Estate Investment and Rental Property Income. Is it right for you? And I think that's really what the gist of this whole webinar is about, because I think many people see a lot of individuals doing this, especially today, not only their neighbors or friends or colleagues, but it's all over the television with all kinds of programs showing people, and it makes it look really easy, right? Or obtainable. And there's a lot to it. And so it may not be right for you, but it also can be very lucrative, when done right. So you have your options. Obviously, when you're going to purchase a rental or a commercial investment property, you can either, if you're lucky to have cash, you can use cash, of course. And by doing so, obviously, you're going to eliminate a lot of costs that go into part of the closing cost for your mortgage, such as title insurance and mortgage insurance. It gives you a little more, it actually gives you a lot more negotiating power. That's what we're seeing now, right, in the real estate market, is that there's multiple offers all over the place, and cash is coming out of the thin air on so many offers, and those are the ones that are that really are strong. Sellers are really looking for those. That doesn't mean that you can't be a strong buyer with a loan, needing a loan as well, which we'll talk about. Obviously, you wouldn't have any mortgage payment. You can close really quickly. It does reduce your personal liquidity. And then there's so that would be a negative, right? Possibly. And there's no tax benefit, right? In terms of the mortgage interest, right? So every month you can write off the interest on your mortgage when you have a commercial property. And you're taking all the risk, when the bank or somebody else is involved, they're kind of sharing in that. When you borrow, you're going to keep some of your cash, right? With that being said, it's not like borrowing for a residential home. With a residential home, you can do, as low as 2%, even depending on if it's a FHA loan or something like that. But with a commercial or an investment property, I'm just going to use investment property as the term for today. But with an investment property, banks are usually looking for 20% cash from the borrower, unless you are going to be an owner-occupied building. So if you buy a 3-unit or a 2-unit and you're going to live in one, then that does get reduced. The interest rates for an owner-occupied building are less, but more, the rates are higher if you are not going to be living there. And they're all over the board. I always, when I talk with clients, I say, talk to your local banks, see what they'll do for you. And a lot of times it depends on what your history is, what your experience is in this industry, and then also what your relationship is with your bank. And of course, and then there are some tax benefits from borrowing, because you get to write off that mortgage interest. There'll be some fees that you will have to pay, several thousands of dollars in closing costs, and then you'll have a lower income from the investment, because you're putting in some cash on the down payment. Okay, so as I touched on already, when you're borrowing from the bank, it's not like buying your own home. Your rate's going to be a little higher, and you are going to have to come up with more cash versus the owner occupied. One of the things I always mention to my clients is take a look at, find out about an in-house loan, which is where a small bank, when you take out a mortgage, a bank typically will sell that mortgage to the secondary market, right? And so they have a lot of requirements that they have to meet as the bank to be able to do that. So the smaller banks are able to hold in-house a portfolio of loans. So oftentimes they'll have packages that they'll have available that the larger banks do not, because the larger banks do have to sell those loans to the secondary market. They don't hold any of their loans in-house. So that's something to look at when you're talking to a bank. Cash, I say in this current market, because with a question mark, I mean, interest rates are still so incredibly low that, you know, you may not want to take your cash. If you do have cash available, you may not want to put too much down on a property, because you're going to want to use that maybe for the work that you're going to do on the property, and also maintain that as an investment, and utilize the low, or capture the low interest rates. Another thing that you can do as part of your financing is you can have the seller hold some paper. So what that means is, let's say that the bank, you know, requires 20% and you don't have 20%. So what you can do, but you have 10%. So you're missing that there's a gap of 10% that you need for the down payment. You can go to the seller and ask them, hey, would you be interested in holding some paper? In other words, would they be interested in holding a note on the property to make up the difference? And oftentimes that's structured with what's called a balloon payment. So you would go to them and you would say, as part of your negotiating, you would say, listen, would you be interested in holding paper? This is how much I'm looking for. We could do a term of 20 years, but with a balloon payment in 5 years. So what that means is your mortgage payment would be spread out over 20 years, just like it would, or your payment to the seller, just like it would be with your mortgage. But then at the end of the 5-year term, you would pay them off the balance at that point. And oftentimes sellers are interested in that, because it has its plus and minuses. It helps, it could ease the seller. They could potentially have a capital gain on the property that they're selling, right? So that's oftentimes can be a big tax payment. It'll ease that for them, because it pushes that out, for they don't have to pay capital gains on the money that they're holding. It's continued income for the seller. So, you know, they've sold the property, but now you're going to be paying them every month to borrow money from them. But there is a risk for the seller, because if you have any problems, you can't make your payments. For a seller, they're going to always be in the second position to a bank. So when you take a bank loan, they're in the first position. So if anything ever happened and then you defaulted on your note, they would get paid off first before the seller. And then there's some other options. A lot of people will come to us as advisors through the SBDC and say, oh, I want to get an SBA loan. Well, there really isn't an SBA loan. There are guarantees. In the SBA, what they'll do is they'll come in and guarantee your loan to the bank. So if there's some criteria that you're not meeting, but the bank is still interested in working with you, they'll say, well, let's look at getting an SBA guarantee. It does add to the cost of your loan, but it enables you to actually obtain a mortgage where you may not have been able to do that without their help. And then there's some other programs out there as well, like an FHA if you're owner occupied. So the ROI, the return on investment, how much will you actually make? This is the part of it that, you know, is it right for you? And I have this conversation all the time, because just like Chris, we've been doing this for a long time, and it looks like it's something that could be fun. It looks like it's something that could generate, you know, a bunch of cash, some income, but there's a lot of work to it. So depending on what you're looking for your return, you're going to look at either you're going to do some short-term rents or you're going to do a long-term rent, right? So your short-term rent, are you going to be doing weekly rentals? Are you looking to do monthly rentals? And there's a big difference in there. There's a big difference in time management for yourself. With a long-term lease, right, you're going to find the right tenant, hopefully, and you're going to sign a lease with them for a year, a minimum, you know, probably a year. And then you're going to, quote unquote, sit back and let them pay them the rent each month, and hopefully not have to do anything. If you've done some of the things that Chris is going to touch on in her section, if you've done the work to get the property prepared so that it is not a headache for you, so the long-term rent could be the way to go for you. The short-term rentals, you definitely get more money. One of the properties that I had, I would do short-term all summer long, and then switch over to long-term in the off season. And the long-term would usually go from like October until May. or April, and then I would keep the month of May open, and all I would do was work. I would work on the property to get it ready for all the summer renters that come in. That would be a minimum of a week. So there's a lot more money that you can charge for those types of rents, but there's a lot more work that goes with it too. Then the other difference between a short-term and long-term in terms of gains. So short-term, is it something that you're going to just fix up and you're going to flip it, right? So you find a property and you see that it needs improvements. You can negotiate it for the price that you think is right, but you know you're going to want to flip the property. One of the things that you definitely want to talk to your accountant about is two things: is what the capital gains will look like, because you're not holding on to that property for very long. The capital gains are going to be at their highest point. There are some ways to avoid that. One of the ways that I've used many times, it's called a like-kind exchange. And essentially what you do is when you're ready to flip that property or sell it, you identify, and you literally, that's what it's called identify. You identify another property that you want to purchase, and there's a whole legal piece that's set up that would allow you to sell the property that you just finished, take the money that you made from it, that will go directly to the new property, so you don't have to pay any capital gains on that money that you made on the flip. Okay, so you're basically rolling that money over into the new property, but it has to be set up ahead of time. And there are people that specialize in that throughout the state that all they do are set up like-kind exchanges. So you could easily find someone, it's an accountant or an attorney that will do that for you. Then what about long-term? Is your idea that you want to purchase a property and you're just going to sit on it? You really want to hold that property, and you want to have what's known in the industry as mailbox money, right? Because you've done all the work that Chris is going to go through, and you've got that property set up, so it's going to really, it's going to pay, it's going to make you some money. You know, the rents, when they're added up, are going to be more than the mortgage, insurance, taxes, all the other things. So you're going to actually be making money every month, and you're just going to sit back and you're going to collect that mailbox money as the checks come into your mailbox. So that's why I spelled that. And some people look at this as a good way, a source of retirement, to source their retirement. You know, they're getting ready to leave their career, and they want to look at taking on a property that they could then generate some monthly income from. And so you do see a lot of people that consider doing something like an investment property as they're getting closer to retire. Then some of those costs that I had mentioned, the mortgage, insurance, and taxes, everybody thinks of those, but then there's other expenses that you as the landlord are going to be responsible for, especially in a multi-unit situation. A single family, if you have a single family home that you're renting, you can have the tenants pay for everything if you want. It just depends on how you want to structure the lease. But oftentimes there are some common area utilities that you'll have to pay. There's, you know, you've got to maintain the parking lot for plowing. You've got to get the lawn mowed. There's always repairs and maintenance that happens, even with you know, you put in a new kitchen. And as we have all seen, the refrigerator, even though it's brand new, goes. And you're going to be responsible. You're the one that's going to get those calls. So that's why the next bullet is your time equals lots of it. It really does. So if you're considering doing something like this, you have to look at it as, I say, it's another full-time job, because it really is. It's not just, you know, you spend all the time finding the right property, then you get through the negotiating and you get through all of that. You get the keys, and then you start working on the property to get it to the way that you want it to be for your tenants. And then you've got all of these other expenses that go along with it. So in terms of time, such as, you know, dealing with your tenants, looking and screening for them, dealing with the leases, collecting the rent, so on and so forth. I did see a question come up in the chat. Do we want to do those at the end, Kelsey? Is that what we said? I think touch on buying investment real estate and opportunity zones and their additional resources.
If it matches what you're talking about, you feel free to take it. Otherwise, we will definitely have time at the end.
Yeah. So investment real estate in opportunity zones, it's It's pretty complicated in the sense that basically what it is there are areas that are designated in the state that are opportunity zones. Okay, they're predefined. And if you come in, it's not necessarily like you would purchase a house in an investment or an opportunity zone. It's usually a commercial building, and there's usually investors that go into that. As far as additional resources from the state level, I'm not exactly sure if there if you're referring to the opportunity zone itself, or are you talking about, financing options? But I don't believe there are any resources from the state level. Usually when you're looking to invest in real estate and opportunity zone, you are going to be working with your accountant. There's a lot of formulas that go into that, and probably an attorney as well. The other thing is that you just got to remember finding the right tenant is very important, depending on if you're going to be doing the short or the long-term rental properties. A lot of people do VRBO or Airbnb. They take pretty substantial fees. When I first started doing it 20 years ago on short term, the fees where you just paid basically your subscription, and then that was it. And then they started adding all kinds of fees on, not only to the landlord but to the tenants as well as you rent a property. You can also advertise your property on Zillow, Apartment Finder, Craigslist. Two things. One thing about Craigslist, there's been a lot of scams. I had one myself that a woman reached out to me and said, I can't believe this beautiful property was on the water. And she said that you were actually going to rent it for, I don't even remember what the amount was, but she reached out to me because she thought it sounded too good to be true. And it was. Well, it was someone who just copied my whole listing and then published it somewhere else on Craigslist as their property. So you have to be really careful about that. But one of my favorites in terms of renting for mid to short term, like month or 2 month or 3 month, is traveling nurses. That's fantastic. And Furnished Finders is a place that you would actually list your property for rent. And obviously they have to be furnished properties, right? So you have to have everything. The kitchen has to be fully furnished, ready to go. Linens, all of that. And then there are nurses, as you may be aware, that travel all over the US, and they're always looking for places, and they go through a site like Furnished Finders, and it's fantastic. So I highly recommend that. Okay. Why hire? And I put that in quotes, a real estate broker / realtor. First of all, hire. You as the buyer, you're not technically hiring them because the seller is actually paying the commission as part of the contract. That's how it works. And I say real estate broker / realtor because a lot of people use broker and realtor interchangeably. A realtor is actually a professional organization that a real estate broker would be part of. But it's a great idea. I always recommend that, not because I am a broker and a realtor, but it just makes a lot of sense because when you have a broker working with you, I have clients that will come to me through the SBDC and they'll see that I have experience in this area. So they'll ask to meet with me and they'll say, well, should I bring a broker in? I want to go see this, or should I try to do? Absolutely bring a broker in. Find someone that you trust. And if you don't have someone, talk to other people and get a referral because they're going to be on your side. They're going to work for you. Hopefully you will become their client and not a customer, which the broker will go through that with you at the time of when you decide to work with them. There is a difference. Being a client doesn't cost you any money, but adds all kinds of protection for you. So that's something that will be discussed when you start to work with your real estate broker. They'll also be looking for any red flags. That's their job. They will, make sure that the information that's provided on the property is complete, that it looks accurate. If it doesn't, they'll talk to the listing broker about it. They also have professional referrals. So if you need someone to fix a roof, or you need someone to do some sort of test on the property or inspection prior to closing, they'll make those referrals for you. They help you negotiate and they use Maine state approved contracts. So there isn't anything that's going to be wonky about, you know, the seller saying, well, you know, let's just put together an agreement ourselves. No, using a broker, they're going to use the Maine state approved contracts, which are held up in court and will legally protect you throughout the whole process. So there really is no reason to not use a real estate broker. Okay,
Right.
Chris.
Thanks, Susan. Excuse me. And along with that, your broker is going to give you some professional referrals. In particular, they're in contact with inspectors. So once you are in negotiations and decided that you're going to purchase this property, then you're going to ask for certain inspections. Definitely want a general inspection. And with a general inspection, they go over your foundation, the joists, the subflooring, the columns that hold up the building. So in particular, if there's water in the basement, you have to worry about that. And if there's a crack in the foundation, that's going to be a big red flag. And all of those things are going to add up, going to cost some money. The roof, they'll inspect the shingles, the age of them. Also going to do the attic. And when it comes to the attic, they're looking at, like, is there wiring in the attic? How is the insulation up there? Can they see water seepage coming through? Interior doors and windows, are the sills old? And like with windows, one apartment building in particular that I had purchased, when I got it, it had the old lead weighted windows. I knew it when I was buying it. And so that kind of helped me negotiate, along with some other items, the price, because all of those windows were going to have to be replaced. This was going to be an apartment building, a multi-unit for people to live in. They're also going to look at the bathrooms, the kitchen, and your systems. They should go through like the heating and cooling to make sure that they work. They're going to check to see, in particular with the heating, is there any oil leakage? If it's oil, are things connected properly? Is it running well? They'll pull the filters out to see if they've been changed. Usually with furnaces, there should be a service record attached, and they'll be able to see that, see who's been servicing it. Plumbing, the age of the plumbing. If you have old pipes like cast iron, which I did have in one apartment building that we owned, and we knew it when we bought it. On an Easter Sunday morning, we got a call from the tenant on the first floor saying there was water coming into their closet. And that water was coming from the third floor apartment. And the pipe had to be removed because it was cast iron and it was completely impacted. The inspector told us it was cast iron. It was probably going to have to be replaced. And it absolutely did have to be replaced. Electrical. So they're going to check like the masthead outside, the electricity coming in. Also, if there's a fuse box, there are still places in Maine that there are fuse boxes, and the service level, is it 100 amp? Is it 200 amp? Is it going to be able to carry the load that's existing in the building? And then if you are planning on doing some updates, like allowing people to have washers and dryers in their units, then you're probably going to have to add more service. Exterior siding. And also, when you're doing the inspections, a couple of things. I mean, one, you want to be with the inspector so you can see everything yourself. You want to take notes, and usually your realtor will be with you, your broker, your real estate agent. But when you go to check out that during the inspection time, also check out the neighborhood. I remember the very first apartment building we were negotiating to purchase, really seriously looking at it. We came and it was a hot August day. And on one side of, it was all a row of multi-units. So in one multi-unit, all you could smell was dog poop, and it was awful. And then on the other side, we noticed, we were there for a few hours, we noticed cars coming and going, and it's like, I wonder what they're doing here. So we just kind of walked away because the neighborhood just didn't seem like it was right for us. So those are things that you want to be aware of yourself. If you're purchasing a property that is not on public sewage, then you're going to be looking at a septic system. Now, septic plans are on file with the municipality. These are public record. Again, your agent can help you get this information, and they're also pretty good at deciphering it. You know, what it means. Does this look like a good system? This leads us to additional inspections and tests. So if you're purchasing a property that has a septic system, I would highly recommend asking for a septic inspection, because a failed septic system, I had to replace one a few years back before it failed, but we knew it was going to fail. And that was about $8,000, and that was probably 10 years ago. I know it's considerably more now. And the inspection is going to look at the leach field to see how much useful life is left on that. They also check the tanks for cracks, the connections from the house to the tank. Another inspection is mold. So that kind of goes back into the general inspection. If you have, your inspector says, hey, I noticed that there's leaking in the attic, quite possibly you have mold, or if the siding isn't good on the house and they can see cracks and where the weather's getting in, those are red flags about you probably want to get a mold inspection done. And mold remediation can cost, at the very least, you know, like $2,500 if it's an entire attic, and it goes up from there. So that's something that you want to be aware of, because mold is also a health hazard for a lot of people. Then radon. So radon comes from the soil, and radon causes between 15 and 22,000 lung cancer deaths a year. And this is why, and in the state of Maine, we have a lot of radon. So, you know, this is why you hear about it. You can click on this link that I put in the webinar to get all the facts about radon. And if you are purchasing, excuse me, a building that's going to be a long-term investment for you, you're going to have tenants, it's multi-unit, you have to have a radon test done, and you have to keep that on file. If the levels come out and they're fine, you don't have to have it done for another 10 years, I believe. If they don't, then you're looking at some type of remediation for the radon, and those systems run between $1,800 and $2,400. Additionally, if you purchase a property that has a well, you're going to want to get the water tested, excuse me, to see if you have things like arsenic, high mineral contents, hard water, and there are things that you can do to offset that. You know, the air, I think you'd probably only want the air tested if you could smell something that's bad in the air. But, you know, again, you have to figure out if that's something that you want to do. That's kind of above and beyond. Lead paint, any property that was built before 1978 most likely contains lead paint. You do have to disclose that. That should have been disclosed to you when you go to purchase. Many of us know about that, and you have to provide those facts to tenants if ultimately you're renting the building. So, excuse me, fixer-uppers. I love them. Obviously, Susan does too, because we both did a lot of them. And Maine has the oldest housing stock in the nation. So, excuse me, the nice thing about a fixer-upper is that if you do it right, this is something that, you know, not only can you get residual income if you hold it and have long-term tenants or short-term tenants, but it also appreciates in value if you do it correctly. So, and this is now becoming a more affordable way to find housing, because as we know, a lot of out-of-state folks, people with deep pockets, are grabbing up the houses that are more desirable, and even some of these fixer-uppers. But, you know, if you're somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of money, but you have some skill set and some time, this might be the avenue for you to consider doing. And so we'll go into, if you now at this point, okay, you've gone through everything and you've purchased it, so you need building permits for certain things. Electrical, you're going to need a permit for that. Plumbing, structural. Now with plumbing, if you are going to just like pull the toilets or the vanities in the bathrooms and just replace them, you don't need a permit for that. But if you're moving any type of anything within a room, like in a kitchen, if you're going to rearrange the kitchen, then you need to have electrical and plumbing permits. And of course, if you're going to build an addition, you're going to need a building permit for that. And they're going to inspect the foundation, make sure that you have the correct barriers for soil erosion, especially if you're around any area where there's water, even if it's a perennial stream, all the way up to being on the ocean. There's huge environmental concerns with controlling the soil runoff. And heating. So this is something that I knew if you changed out your furnace that you would have to get a building permit. And in my own home, I actually just added another, it's a Rinnai heater, right? Propane heater to my existing system, just in the new addition that we put on. And our code enforcement officer, he was great because he said, you know, among all the other permits that you pulled, you were supposed to pull one for that too. I didn't know that. So if you're adding heat, you have to pull a permit for that as well. And just check, you know, with your local code enforcement officer. They'll help you with all of these things before you even start. And then life safety code. So this, it's basically a book if you want to read the whole thing. You can go to there's a link there to the state fire marshal's office. But they cover things like fire blocking, smoke detectors, egresses, making sure that you have a fire escape plan. If you have 5 or more units, I believe you have to have a plan on file and available to all your tenants as well, so everybody knows where they're supposed to go. And the state fire marshal and the life safety code supersedes anything. And I found that out. I had purchased a restaurant that had apartment buildings above it, and I had it, at that point, I probably had it for 6 years. And every year the code enforcement officer and the local fire chief would come, they'd do their annual inspection, and, you know, they'd say, you have to change this outlet to a GFI, and, you know, we need you to put more insulation here, or the foam fire blocking, and just little things. And immediately I would get them done. So after 6 years, 1 year I had put a brand new door on the line. So the cooking line, excuse me. And I don't know why, but when I bought the building, the exit sign from the dining room sent people right through the cooking line. So that was actually an approved fire exit by the local authorities. I thought it was strange, but that's what it was. So when we put a new door on, and then I had my annual inspection, the fire chief said, well, I don't think that door is correct. And the other door was rusting and everything else. And I said, it's the same swing. We didn't change anything. We just put a new door on, a much better door than was there. And he said, well, I'll have to call the state fire marshal and get their take on it. Well, once the state fire marshal came down, there became a laundry list of items that had to be done because of life safety code. And that was a $40,000 to $50,000 update on that very old building. Again, it's just something to be aware of when you're owning and operating, whether it's a commercial building or an apartment building, that that is in place and does supersede anything else. All right, so the fun part of doing this is updating kitchens, baths, and creating curb appeal. And I know in my home and nationally, the #1 place to gather is the kitchen. So that's got to be up to date, got to look nice. And people spend between $10,000 and $50,000 or more to renovate a kitchen. When you're talking about an apartment building or even just a single family home that you're going to rent, you really need to think about being practical on this as well, because there's going to be a lot of wear and tear from the people that are living there. So you might want to consider, instead of granite countertops, just laminate or butcher block, things that are less expensive. Instead of that nice farm sink, you might want to just consider, a decent stainless steel sink that's less expensive. Instead of the subway tile flooring, you might want to consider the click lock flooring. Those things are going to bring your costs down, but still have a nice presentation. And then bathrooms actually have like the highest rate of return for your investment. So for instance, if you spend $7,000 on a bathroom, you could return as much as $2,400 from doing that. So above that $7,000 that you put in, if you're selling it. And the things that people are looking for are like nice new vanities, new tub and tile, and nooks for storage have become really popular. So those updates. The exterior. So first impressions matter. When you drive up to, the place, whether somebody's renting it or whether somebody's going to purchase it, spend some money on painting, getting some plants out there, fixing up the driveway. Many of these updates for the exterior, if you have the manpower, meaning yourself, they only cost you hundreds of dollars, but they make the property a lot more appealing to the person either coming to rent it or the person coming to purchase it. So this is my current project, and so this is the kitchen of the house that we purchased, and you can tell it's from 1960 something. For micro countertops, like old built-in things. So there was really no option. This whole thing was going to need to be renovated. And you can see on the floor there's actually newspaper that was between the subfloorings, and there was about 7 layers of subflooring. So, make sure you have the right tools and a strong back when you're doing things like this. And this is the kitchen now. So it's not complete, we're just about there, but you can see we use just a nice, laminate countertop there, butcher block, and there's another wall that is not pictured in this picture, but it also has butcher blocks. So I spent probably, as far as the countertops went, I think it was a total of about $600. It looks great. Now I had been quoted $2,500 for granite. I saved myself $1,900. This house didn't merit doing granite. And the other thing about that is some people are just going to pull it out anyways. So make it look really nice and practical, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to update it. The bathroom. So this is obviously a bathroom that needed updates. And you can see the tile was just worn, and actually underneath that tile, all of that luan was rotten. So everything needed to be pulled up, and we went and turned it around, got a nice little vanity that's compact there, and that whole set together, I believe I bought it at Lowe's, and it's like their Roth Allen collection. The light bar, the mirror, and the vanity they put it as a grouping. I think the whole thing may have cost me about less than $700. And then the tile is actually the Life Proof from Home Depot. And I'm not trying to advertise for anybody, I'm just saying what I used. But this, it looks like regular, tile that you paid somebody to put down. And this is a 12 by 24 tile that has it feels like a ceramic surface, and it's a click lock product. A lot cheaper and a lot less time than actually putting regular tile down. And here's the exterior of this cute little house. The roof, we were told, was going to have to be replaced, but that's because there was a lot of moss growth on it, and the siding, was you can tell was in terrible shape, and even that little well house and stuff. And of course, everything's all overgrown there. We cleaned up the roof first before we decided to replace it, and cost us about $800 to have somebody come and professionally power wash it. Come to find out, we have a few more years left in that roof, so that saved us some money. And we did replace some of the siding. Not all of it had to be replaced, and painted it. And boom, now you got a little curb appeal going on. So this is, spending this kind of money, spending this kind of time is definitely going to increase the value of your property. So as Susan talked about, the things that, you have to worry about as far as costs go. The holding cost. If you purchase a property and you think, well, it's going to take 2 months to get everything up to date, think again, I would probably double that to 4 months. And just yesterday, Susan and I were talking about this, and we're both kind of in the same predicament where, we've had experience and we kind of estimated our time, but it's taking even longer. And now with the tradespeople being so backed up and hard to find, you have to figure that there's going to be even more time. So property taxes come due, insurance, utilities. And insurance, if it's not an owner-occupied property and you are doing this work, you want to get insurance that covers the fact that you're doing renovations in case something happens. So it's not the same as your regular homeowner's insurance. And then as far as repairs, like I said, painting, inexpensive, but it makes everything pop inside and outside. Replacing things like appliances, and then as you saw, doing the yard work, and then systems. So, if you need to replace an old furnace, and then remediation, like mold remediation, things like that. All of those things add up. So you want to make sure you make a budget before you start. And this is a budget for a property that we had paid cash for. This is a while back. And excuse me, these are all the items that, you had to worry about. And then you kind of look at it and say, great, we're going to have some money left over. Well, that was never leftover money because there's always something else. So you want to go about 10% above your budget. So you see my leftover amount. I probably should have figured my leftover amount to be about $5,000. And it probably would have been in a good ballpark. And then, you want to estimate what your income's going to be, at the same time. Like, is this going to, it's just like writing a spreadsheet for a business plan. Is this going to be worth it? Are you going to get the income that you're looking for? And then tenants' rights and landlord rights. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. There's a lot of information about this. But basically, tenants have a lot of rights right now. And in particular, they have the right to a court hearing before you can evict them. You have to repair any areas that are considered affecting their habitability of the property. So if a toilet's not working, if a refrigerator is down, if doors don't close properly, anything like that, that is your responsibility to take care of and repair. And then for more information on rental laws, you can click on that one. And then this lease agreement from the Maine Attorney General's office, this is a really good one. I've actually used it. You can download it because it has all the legal information that is appropriate for the state of Maine. But you can add and adjust things that, pertain to your property. So instead of paying an attorney to write one up, this is a pretty good one to use. And then local municipalities have additional regulations. Last November, Portland passed rent control. So that's a whole other thing. If you have rental property in Portland, you're now under some real restrictions. Even if it's Airbnb property, it covers short-term and long-term rentals. There are some exceptions to that. And like Susan said in the beginning, you can contact an SBDC advisor for more information. And I'm going to stop my screen share so we can take any questions that there might be.
I did put up in the chat the resource through DECD, which is the Department of Economic and Community Development, with regards to the opportunity zones and how you might take your potential capital gains, that's how it works, and invest it in one of these opportunity zones. But as I said, it's a little complicated, too much to go into today for sure, but they have a pretty good list of information on that site. So if you click on to that link, you should be able to gather some good information to get going.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. That was fantastic. And also, I guess, I can confirm that I know that you two have done all these things. I've even seen some of Chris's handiwork in person. And so this was great to see the combination of both your lived experiences and how that goes into your business advising. And Chris has a couple of upcoming blogs that will go deeper into all of this. And so I'll make sure that some of that is accessible through my follow-up emails. I saw you answered the one question that came in through the chat. So I don't see any other questions, but if anyone has anything, we have a few minutes left. You can feel free to plug that in there. But otherwise, this was fantastic. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thanks for
take
sharing
care.
your lunch with us.
Yeah, just lots of thank yous coming in through the chat.